Welcome back to The Sitting Duck, a Town of Duck podcast, and welcome to Jazz Week. Every October, the town is home to the Duck Jazz Festival, an event that started in 2007. This festival is celebrating its 15th anniversary this year, offering us the opportunity to reflect on the growth of the festival and look at where it began, where it is, and where it's headed. A little bit of past, present, and future, if you will. Which brings me to introducing our special guest for this episode, none other than Kathy McCullough Testa.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here today. I'm really excited.
Me too. And I think it's so great because we are in a milestone year, and for something like this to preserve the arts, and especially today, something that celebrates live music, it's important for us to take a step back and appreciate where we started and where we're going. And many people might not know this, but North Carolina is so deeply rooted in jazz. We have legends like Nina Simone, Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, Max Roach. All of these legendary jazz musicians hail from North Carolina. So it's really cool that the town is able to promote that and preserve that. So really appreciate you being here and excited to learn more. I've been at the helm of planning, but some of the historical information, I'm really excited to learn from you. So let's get started. Let's just kind of start from the get-go. What inspired you to create the Duck Jazz Festival, and what was your personal connection, if any, to jazz music?
I think when I was hired to be the first public information and special events coordinator, I was charged with basically designing and implementing the entire events program for the town of Duck, and to be innovative and to be creative. And in looking at the Outer Banks and where we were, to bring in different types of genres of music and also support and uplift those musicians that are here. And that's basically what I did. That was my inspiration to start. It was a total blank slate. And it was actually very fun and challenging to start, because if you look at the town park today, none of this was here. Absolutely none of it when I started. The town park was an idea. The boardwalk was in the planning stages. The building that we're sitting in right now, we're in the Ducktown Hall, was not here. It was an old restaurant that wasn't open at the time. It was used as a training facility for the fire department before the town hall was built. So the inspiration was I was able to be totally creative and look at something that would benefit the community, bring everyone together, the volunteers in the town, but also the entire Outer Banks community, which was something that was exciting and challenging, but really, really fun to do and innovative.
So where was the actual music held when none of it was here? Where did you have the performances?
There weren't any. When I got here, there was pretty much, if there was no music, there were no special events other than the 4th of July parade, which was actually held by Kathy's Inlet, the community, and the town took it over when I became public information officer. And then we moved it to where it is today. So there was no music. There was some live music in some of the restaurants, but that's basically what was here.
And so you felt there was an opportunity
yes.
to take it, and here we are now. With that process, where did you start? Looking at that opportunity of having live music and offering a festival, where did you really start? What was your first step?
I think the first step was I got involved in the community. I went out and I was active with some different events and different fundraisers, and was able to meet some of the musicians that were already here, like Laura Martier and Ruth Wyand and Joe Mapp, those folks that were out there performing, also performing jazz, and some of the other folks that helped, like Chris Whitehurst, who was my first sound person. And then looking and saying, how can we do that? And how can we take that and implement that in Duck and make that a community event? And then looking at the background, my background's kind of, if you look at it, it's varied. I have experience in communications, but I came here from Pittsburgh, and I was a project manager for a Fortune 500 financial company in technology. So I was taking my project management experience and using that to implement events. So it translated very well. The other thing that we did is, by doing research and looking online, at that time, that's when actually Twitter, which is now X, started to become popular. I think we were the first, I think we were the first town on X back then. And then we implemented Facebook, and Facebook had much more of an organic reach back then because it wasn't, as developed as it is now, which is almost 20 years later when you think about it. And so what we did is, I talked to people and went out and went to music. I listened to all the music, all the musicians here every night, and decided, this band would work really well in Duck. This band may not work well in Duck, or maybe a combination, but the music scene here is pretty organic. So this person may be playing with this band today, but maybe in that band tomorrow with a different name. So we worked to plan that. And when I did the first festival, the town park really didn't exist. There was a green with a cement slab.
Mm-hmm.
We brought in a tent. We had one electrical line that we used. We brought in running water. And so we made it purposefully small, but then on the other hand, there was a method behind how we planned it. We wanted to showcase local. So we showcased local artists. So we showcased Ruth and Laura. And then we wanted to bring somebody in from possibly Virginia. So that's the Fuzz Band. And they came back several times and performed at the festival. And then we wanted somebody national. And that's how we chose Jimmy Bruno. And then we got lucky because Jimmy Bruno brought Gerald Veasley. Gerald Veasley is a renowned jazz bass guitarist, and he's out of Philadelphia. And from there, I thought it was kind of interesting, too, that once people here knew that Gerald was coming, they approached me, and they were super excited, a few of our volunteers. And then that's how I got connected into the more national smooth jazz scene. So it just all fell into place by the decisions we made. And the Jazz Festival was put into place, too, because we wanted to expand the season here in Duck at that time.
Because it was truly just a summer season type of environment then, right?
Yes, truly. And we said, what can we do to expand shoulder season? And then we selected, the weekend. It was like the second weekend in October. And we did that also because we knew some people had that Monday off. It was a holiday. So you could also make a long weekend out of it and not just a week. But it would benefit the town, the businesses, the homeowners, rentals. We looked at the big picture when it came to that.
And that's something too. Looking at some of the posters, we've had a long-running tenure with a partnership with the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau. So they're able to create a formula that's used to track the economic impact. Is that something that you recall using when you were working with this to kind of look at the economic impact of the Jazz Festival?
Back then, there was not a formula to track the economic impact. And I'm looking right now to see when the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau became our sponsor. I think it would actually been season 4, if I'm looking, or 5. They actually became an underwriting sponsor, if I'm looking at the posters correctly here in front of me. We started basically it was town funds. The town wanted a free event that was accessible and wanted to bring people in. And then I think we really had to prove ourselves, which we did. And then the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau started to join us. I think it was season 4 or 5. It looks like 5. So we weren't really able to track the economic impact at the time because there wasn't a formula and they weren't sponsoring us just yet. Yes.
But it's safe to say, looking at the fact that we're on the 15th year now, obviously there was and there continues to be a large economic impact. So when you started this, did you think that you would see it continue on 15 years later and have this economic impact? So when I did the grant closeout last year for the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, the formula that they currently use for their grant writing is based on a formula created in 2016. We're now 2024. So, that formula is a little bit outdated, but, we're looking at close to $2 million that just a 2-day festival brought in based off of last year's numbers. So when you started this, did you think that it would ever grow to that level of impact?
I was hoping that it would grow to that level of impact, and I am so pleased that it has. It's exciting to see where it is. And I think if I look at everything, that this is the longest running music festival on the Outer Banks currently in its 15th year, because I know that the Mustang Music Festival started afterwards and is a little longer, and the Bluegrass started afterwards.
So this is the longest running. Did you ever think that would happen?
No, but I'm glad it did. I mean, it's absolutely perfect for the Outer Banks. I think it's perfect for Duck. I think it has helped put Duck on the map, and jazz musicians, they're begging to come here. I still have them contact me and say, "Hey, I want to go back," and I say, "Well, you have to contact the town. Contact the town and see if you can go back." And I'm sure that's how Lau got back, and Joe, and hopefully there are a few others that I'd love to see come back on this list. So yes.
Yeah, and you mentioned two artists that are returning, and we thought it would kind of be a cool way to nod where we started and where we are and where we're going to make it a full circle moment. But the Lau Tizer Band and the Joe Bayonne Vibraphone Experience, they performed at some of the first jazz festivals. So they were, no pun intended, instrumental in getting the festival to where it is now. So having them here really is a testament to having them and their impact, and from what I understand, you still have a great relationship with these musicians. So it really shows that this festival, while it is a music festival, it really does put Duck on the map. And I can also attest that this is a festival in which people in the jazz community want to come here. And we're very, very proud of that. So when we're talking about the economic impact, there's also a people element to this. And when you brought the jazz festival to the community, what was the initial reaction? What was the community's thoughts of having a jazz festival?
Well, I think there was an initial reaction to having a festival. We were told in certain circles that it couldn't be done, that we just couldn't put together something of this size and this magnitude in the little town of Duck, especially since the town at that time was relatively a new town, and we were planning and growing, and we were actually doing a lot at the same time when it was coming to events or planning the boardwalk and building the boardwalk, building the amphitheater. All of that was happening all at the same time. So there were a lot of people, town employees, town council, volunteers working together to do all of that. So it was a very busy and vibrant time, and actually very, very fun to create. And so when we did this, we were told, okay, we'll believe it when we see it. And so when we did the first one, and this is kind of a music reference, it's a kind of Bon Jovi, but we did it on a wing and a prayer, basically. We just went out there and said, we're just going to do it. And when I look at the first one, those people that were our musicians, especially Laura and Ruth, they actually helped work the festival. Laura's husband, Dan Mortier, every year pretty much lent me a drum kit. There was always a drum kit here ready to go, and it was one of Dan's. So we pulled together as a community. We worked on volunteers, not just from Duck, but they were basically Outer Banks and Currituck counties. My family, I'll tell you, give a lot of credit to my husband, Greg, and my parents who came every single year to be here to help work. Friends that I had met from the Chamber of Commerce and other places from the school system, they came and helped. And so what we did in building that community, I think we had over 100 volunteers. I can't count right now, but there were numerous volunteers that worked throughout the entire day for the festival. Also, the business community pulled together. One of our first sponsors was the Duck Community and Business Alliance, and they stayed with us the entire time. And our business community stepped up. They had special events. They ran specials. One special event that came to mind at Aqua when Adrian Crutchfield was here with his team and his band, we had a Sax in the City party. So we were creative because Adrian's a sax player. So those are some of the things that we did. And some of the town staff that's still here, everybody stepped up and did something that was a little bit outside of their comfort zone or their bailiwick or their skill set to help make the festival a success. Sandy Cross ran logistics. Chief Ackerman, he ran, all of the traffic control. Lori Ackerman ran merchandise. So everybody stepped up and did something to make the festival a success. Merrick, the person who is in charge of our lifeguards, the lifeguards came and helped provide security. So everybody did a little bit of something to make it a success. Chief Black was also here too. She was also helping with logistics and safety and security too for the festival. So, and they also provided, I would call it people power to get things set up, because it does take a lot to set up when it comes to logistics and signage and sound and catering. And then we also had where the community would come in, and we had restaurants. We expanded it at one point for restaurants to be able to sell here so that attendees could buy food on site. And we had an application process for that. And one year we even got to the point that we had off-site shuttle parking coming from Southern Shores. So things just grew as a community, but it was to build community. That was one of the main goals, was to build community. The other was to increase visitors here to Dock. And the third was to expose those of us that live here to different genres of music and different types of music and different musicians.
With this being the second jazz festival that I've had the honor of planning, that's kind of been the fun part for me, because a lot of people aren't familiar with jazz. And I'll admit, I really wasn't that familiar with jazz either until I started working for the town and volunteering before I started planning them. So becoming more familiar and experiencing the wide genre, you don't realize how much falls under that jazz umbrella. So did you listen to jazz music before you started planning this, or just knowing people in the local musician community, did that inspire the decision to do jazz?
That's a good question. The decision to do jazz was because it was unique. And it was something that I didn't see a lot of on the Outer Banks, except for the local musicians that we were talking about. So I learned as I went along, to be really honest with you. I didn't listen to a lot of jazz before this. And what happened and what came out of the first one is when Gerald Veasley was here, I got connected to the executive director of the Berks Jazz Festival, John Ernesto. Wonderful guy. He and his wife were friends to this date. He used to vacation in Duck every year. And I started to attend the Berks Jazz Festivals. And this is where I was able to meet. I met Lautizer and Kelly Minucci and Karen Briggs there. I met Paula Atherton there. I met Joyce Cooling there. So I was at Kim Waters. I can't forget Kim Waters. Kim Waters, I met him there. So I was able to meet them and see them, and then sign contracts to get them to come here. So that's how I started to do my research. After the first one, I ended up going to Philadelphia pretty much every year.
Is that festival still around?
Yes, it's still around.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, John just retired, and there's now a new executive director, but the festival is still around. It's a pretty long-running festival there, too, as well. So it was really cool to be able to get to meet people and form very, very close friendships, especially with Gerald Veasley. Gerald Veasley's amazing. He came in here as a musician, but we did guest hosts, and Gerald was a guest host and Adrian Crutchfield. And I'm going to say a little bit about Adrian later, but Gerald, what happened was, I thought it was very interesting that I did a lot of the announcing. I was on the stage the first couple years. And I said, it would be nice to have somebody else help and not just be me, because people were coming to see jazz musicians. And so that's when we started to bring in the guest hosts. And then the guest hosts also were some of those people that went in, or musicians that went into the schools. We expanded that too, and I see that that's still going on, which is awesome, that they would go into the schools and work with the students. And we did it the Friday before, and a couple of the festivals, we had the students come on and play. With Adrian Crutchfield, we had students come on and play with him. He brought them up. We had a few shadow us that wanted to look at work in sound or work in stage management. So I brought a few in to shadow our sound crew, or to shadow me, or to shadow somebody on the stage doing the sound. Those are some things we were able to do that I think were more impactful in the community. And there were a couple reasons why we did that. We wanted to expand. We wanted to expose students to artists at this level. Some of the things we would say to them, you want to go to this level, but when you're at this level, there's so much else surrounding you. There's the business end, the publicity end, the fact you need to protect yourself because people want to, I shouldn't say stalk you, but they want to come and meet you. We had a lot of people wanting to meet Joyce Cooling. Joyce Cooling comes from the West Coast. She very rarely does East Coast tours. So we were super, super lucky and fortunate to get her. But we had people coming from all up and down the East Coast to see her because of the fact she never does tours, and they also wanted to meet her. And it made logistics a little difficult as to how we were going to do that, to get people to meet her and have her perform. And the other thing is, explaining and understanding that artists, like all of us, I think, who work and have to concentrate, need to get in a zone before they get on stage. You sort of need to let them have their space. And some are different than others. Some need total quiet space. Other ones could be out there listening to the music, talking to attendees, talking to visitors, talking to fans, and be perfectly fine. But they're all different. So working with all the artists, you have to realize that they're all different too. They all have their different style and their own different way of performing and getting ready for their show.
Right. So when, you have obviously a lot of really great memories and stories that you can share, but when you think about the jazz festivals, what are some of the standout performances or moments that really stick out and resonate?
Well, there are a couple. I would say there are three that I really would like to highlight. The first one is Adrian Crutchfield. He is a saxophonist based in Charlotte. He has been here several times. One of the jazz festivals, he performed Lionel Richie's September, and he used that as a demo, and he ended up touring with Prince, and he was part of Prince's New Power Generation before Prince passed away. And then he's also performed with Lionel Richie, Bette Midler, CeeLo Green, a few others, to name a few. But he also performs with his own jazz band, and he's been on jazz cruises. So it helped launch his career. So to me, that was something that, it was one of the goals, was to help. It was help to provide exposure. And it worked. I also still am really good friends with him. I maintain his website. So we've stayed very close throughout the years. The other one is, and this just shows the versatility of jazz musicians. One of the things that we tried to do was, not everybody knows jazz. And a lot of jazz people think, okay, it's instrumental and it's interpretive and doesn't really have a rhythm, but a lot of it does. But we also tried to bring in vocalists so that it would keep people interested in out dancing. So, we did that with like Jackie Scott and the House Wreckers or the Fuzz Band. But on the other hand, some of the jazz musicians would play everyday rock music, pop music. And the last festival that I worked, which was the sixth one, which we brought in the Rippingtons, the last song that they played was Jimi Hendrix' Purple Haze. So to hear that on the town green, it just wasn't expected because we didn't know set lists. Nobody handed me a set list. I didn't want a set list. We trusted our musicians to play what they felt was appropriate and what they wanted to play. So that was very awesome. But I think the most impactful jazz festival to me was the fifth one. And that was 2011. And that was the year that Irene hit the Outer Banks. And Duck was cut off for a few days. We closed the road down. And parts of Duck, especially the waterfront shops, were totally flooded, and that's where our offices were at the time. And we relocated to the public safety building. And while we were trying to recover from that, as well as helping our neighbors up and down the Outer Banks, because it really was a Soundside event, we were also still planning the Jazz Festival and trying to reclaim the park because the park was flooded as well. So the day before the festival, we were still trying to get the park back, which we did. And the energy level that day was, it was intense. It was, people were relieved to be able to go out, to listen to music, to get together with their neighbors, to just be here. And those artists that were here, from the beginning of the festival to the end of the festival, the green was packed. There was never a time where it was not totally crowded. And we had Kirsten Thien Band in from New York. We had Adrian Crutchfield here. We had the Soul Rebels Brass Band from New Orleans. And they actually did not start by coming on the stage. They started by coming through the crowd and walked through the crowd and performed.
That's cool.
And we were throwing brass beads. And then we had Lau Tizer with Kelly Minucci and Karen Briggs, who will be here. We'll be here for this jazz festival on Sunday, October 13th. And they played as well. And so that energy level of that festival was just something you couldn't compare it to anything. And I think it had to do with the fact that we were recovering, we wanted to be together as a community, and the artists that we had on stage were just super high energy.
And that's important too. I know we kind of briefly talked about this before we started recording, but having an event like that after going through something really pulls the community together, that I can almost, based off what you're telling me, kind of like feel that buzz. People just need something to come together. And, we saw something sort of similar when we came back from canceling the festival due to COVID. And that first festival back, it was just, you could cut that anticipation and that buzz with a knife. Like, it was so, I have chills thinking about it now.
Me too.
It was so great. And it's really special because I feel like it's continuing to build. People are really appreciating coming together and listening to live music and enjoying beautiful weather and Duck. We have the most beautiful town, if I do say so. So being able to come here and do that and provide that environment for people, that's very special. So that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I think it's just, when I start to think about this, you get those chills. It's just the buzz around some of this and just how it brings the community together. And I also wanted to just recognize the fact that our community, the people in our community that work so hard on this. And, I had our radio stations at the time that sadly, some of them do not exist today. They would bring our artists on. I would go on. It wasn't paid publicity. It was, there was a lot of free publicity at the time. The online, news outlets that we had, even the print outlets at the time helped out. Our realty companies that sponsored us shared on their blogs. We actually hired a local artist to do our first couple posters, Liz Corso. So she did those. She actually also designed the duck that was up in the summer here. We called it the summer duck. She ddid that for us, and then some of the other people, the businesses here, like Mike Stokes at Flying Fish, and he just did an amazing job. He's sending supplies out to the western part of the state because of the hurricane hitting. He and his crew, as long like what the town did. Adam and Kathy Baldwin with Access Design. Christian Nofsker was my videographer. So we had just a community that just worked together. The other person too that helped me, she came on board a little, just I think year 2 or 3, was Shelley Gates. Shelley Gates has her own company and she's running sound production for Music. So
what's interesting too is a lot of these names that you're mentioning, people that you worked with from the get-go, like Adam and Kathy Baldwin and Michael Stokes at Flying Fish, and Shelley. Shelley's been incredibly supportive. I know her, I knew her personally through the music community before I worked for the town, but she's always been really supportive of anything live music here. So it's really cool to see her continue to thrive. And it's also really neat that Adam and Kathy Baldwin from Access Design are still part of this, and Flying Fish is great. They provide the shirts, the ones that we sell, and then the staff shirts too. And it's also interesting too. You mentioned some of the staff members that helped with the get-go too, and they still do. And I'm interested to talk to you about this, see where this person came in for you. But Betsy Trimble is our community engagement coordinator, and she is instrumental in bringing this together. I mean, it's grown so much that it's a 2-person operation now. So at what point did you ever have anybody like that to kind of come in and help you, or was it mostly volunteers, or were you a one-woman power show?
At the beginning, it was a one-woman power show. But what ended up happening was we did have interns that helped, and we did bring back a few of them and hired them. And then it was bringing in that team of people to help. It was the Chris Whitehursts and the Shelley Gates, and there were numerous other folks that we brought in to help that were to augment, because it couldn't be done together. But there was not a second person here on town staff to help. Yeah, that was part of that. They were here, they had their job, and then they did what they needed to do for the festival.
And we've used this word so many times in this conversation, but community. And I think that just is a testament to how much the community, and these people don't necessarily live in Duck.
No.
But they're still part of the community. And that's something that this festival has really fostered and continues to foster.
Well, and I think one of the things that, we tried to do too was expand it a little bit. And I know a few years we had some music in Kerala, and we had some music, Donnie King at Ocean Boulevard, the fuzz band played there. So we tried to expand it a little bit up and down the beach to, further, expose the artists that were coming in to people that might live here or were visiting in other parts of the Outer Banks. Because as we were getting bigger, we wanted to provide an opportunity for these artists also to gain more exposure when they came here. So that was something else we did as well.
So when you also talk about expanding outside of Duck to get that exposure, let's talk about some of these pre-festival events, because as you know, really, the Jazz Weekend has kind of grown to a Jazz Week almost, and events start on Thursday. So it's grown slowly. I know you mentioned the Sax in the City party with Adrian, but when did that start where things really started the week before?
I would think probably the second or third year. The first year, it was straight festival, straight here at the park, bringing in the tent from Ocean Atlantic Rentals. And they were a total key partner for us. They sourced so much.
And they still are.
There were years that at the last minute they had to find tables, and they were so busy with weddings and other events that the tables were coming in from Virginia Beach. They found what they needed to find for us because we had worked from them since the beginning. But I think it was probably the second or third year that we started, and it was just smaller things. First we had music at certain venues, whether it was Aqua or Blue Point or Coastal Cantina across the street here at Roadside. So we started with those things, and then we looked at the business community and the Duck Community and Business Alliance. We worked together with them to have specials where there would be shopping specials where you could go in and get Duck Jazz Festival special % offers, and different businesses would have, they would offer champagne while you're shopping or that sort of thing, or they would offer, treats for children when they were coming in. We did not really do concerts or have anything on the green in those 6 years. It was more at the town, at different restaurants and different businesses throughout town. And we took our artists around. The fuzz band bounced around a little bit with us to some places. So did Adrian. And so did Gerald Veasley. We went to different places as part of their guest host contract was that they were to go. And what it did was it created buzz for the festival itself. So if somebody was there and said, I got to see Gerald Veasley in this really small venue Friday before the show, it would get more people to the Sunday event.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's really neat. We've covered a lot. But for anybody that's listening who might not have ever attended the Jazz Festival, whether they're a longtime jazz music lover or a first-time listener, what do you hope that if they were to attend, what do you hope that they would take away from this experience?
I think if this was their first time coming to the Jazz Festival, First off, I would let them know that it's a great community, family-friendly, free event, that when you're on that town green, everybody on that green, whether you know them or not, is a friend. It's the feel on that green is just the energy is something that you don't really experience in other festivals. I've been to bigger festivals and other festivals, other places, but this one just has a certain vibe about it that is very welcoming. But what I would want for them to take away is, a greater love of jazz, of music in general, because of, the performances on that stage, a greater love for Duck. Duck is just, it's a special place, and it always has been. And also a greater appreciation of the Outer Banks and what we have to offer here. We really do have a lot to offer. And yes, people come for the beach, they come for water, but there's also a very vibrant, a very diverse music scene. And it's grown. It wasn't here 20 years ago. There were pockets of it, but what we have today started with with festivals like this, and what we did here with music, having concerts on the green. Concerts on the green started here. Now they're in Nag's Head. They have them there. Now, I also know that the town manager of Nag's Head came from Duck. I worked with Andy Garman. So the other thing is, a lot of the restaurants didn't have music in the evenings, and now there's music pretty much everywhere up and down the beach, which is amazing. You have your choice now. Before it was a few places. Now you have your choice. It's multiple genres. That's all different types of music. The variety. It's just so coming here, coming to Duck, coming to this festival. It's just, to me, the culmination of everything that we as a town looked to achieve. And I just would be remiss if I wouldn't say, I'm super excited to be here with you, and I'm super excited that you're carrying it on. And it's just your energy level, just in this conversation. I'm so psyched for this festival to be where it is, and the fact that it's been continued.
Well,
and it's growing. And yeah.
Well, and it's been really inspiring to talk with you and just know where it started. And I mean, how passionate you are about it still.
It makes me emotional. It really does, because it's a great event, and it's a great event that's continued. I'm not for starting it. I will take some credit, but for continuing it, for being where it is, I'm just super, super proud of it. I'm super psyched that it's where it is today, year 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever, I know we said it, but to take a step back and look at the magnormity of it, man.
Well,
how does that feel?
Well, when it hit me this year when somebody, it was Molly Harrison, interviewed me. I was like, what, 15 years? Really? I didn't realize it was this long. So it finally hit me. And as I said, I sat down last night and started to pull together my thoughts for today. And a lot of it just came rushing back in a good way. And it was just like, we really did all this, and we did this with so few resources when we were doing so much else as a small town. So, yes.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Because again, when this started, the town was a baby. The town was already, going through so much growth to become a town after it had incorporated.
Yeah.
To bring something on like this at the same time. That's like second nature for PIOs.
Yes, it is. And events coordinators.
Yes.
You just bite off more than you can chew.
Yes.
But you
love it.
You do it. I think that also comes from my project management background. So yes, you do it.
Chaos coordinator.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's controlled chaos.
Yes. It's exciting. And you can tell when people truly enjoy what they do. And because we're, again, year 15, you can tell that you take a lot of pride in this. And I'm just so excited that you're here. And you'll be here with us on Sunday for some exciting guest hosting.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've been on stage, but I'll be fine. It'll be fine.
So, and I know we kind of brushed on this a little bit, but looking ahead, what do you envision for the future of the Duck Jazz Festival?
Well, it's not totally up to me. It's up to you, since you're the coordinator. But But in the town, but I think, I don't know how much it could grow because, the space is limited, but it's also expanded over a few days. I don't know. Maybe looking at jazz in a different way and bringing more jazz into the Outer Banks at different times of the year. I've thought about some things like doing that, but then having those venues because, our venues are limited.
Right.
It's the few that we have had are not with us anymore. So that would mean some creativity and, of course, winging and praying it again. But things like that, or doing some things, with other towns. I don't, that might be a good thing too, having an event in Nags Head at Dowdy Park. So things like that, expanding it a little bit more, and not having everything in Duck. You want people to come to Duck for the main event and the restaurants, but you could have something else, a little bit with a different town. And the only place right now I can think of would be, that has a venue that could do that would be Nags Head. So
it's interesting you mentioned doing something, in the off season of the off season, so summer.
The off season
of the off season. But some people, they do come for jazz festival, but they'll come for a week in the summer. And there was one band last year where I received multiple requests to bring them back in the summer. So it's kind of floating there on the horizon. They're a group called Brass Queens. It's an all-female group from New York, and they were a lot of fun. You mentioned one of the bands playing Purple Haze.
Yeah.
They played songs like Lady Marmalade and things that people knew. So it was really cool to walk into the amphitheater and people were standing on the stands dancing.
Exactly.
It was incredible. That's really exciting. But it is that bringing a jazz band here in the summer is something that has been requested. And I think that it's on the horizon sooner rather than later. And I love this. I feel like I could talk to you all day about the history of the Jazz Festival and just learning more about the people that have come and where it's grown. But is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I'm just looking forward to Sunday. It's going to be a great day.
It is going to be a great day.
Yes.
The weather's going to be perfect.
It always is.
Always is.
It's still up. It always is.
We're going to have beautiful weather. The crowd's going to be great. We have a great lineup this year. I'm super excited. Saturday, we do have Pershing's own U.S. Army Blues Band coming from D.C. They're going to be kicking off the festival weekend for us. And then Sunday, full day. We have a great lineup. Like I said, we have Jason Nett, who's bringing Randy Brecker from the Brecker Brothers and Ada Ravati. We have the Lautizer Band, of course. And we just have a really great lineup. And you can get that information on our website at duckjazz.com. But Miss Kathy, thank you so much for joining. This was so much fun.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it. I'm so excited to have you here and to be part of this milestone festival. It's so exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for including me.
Of course, of course. And if you see Kathy on Sunday, definitely say hi and say thank you, because this is a great event. And as you've heard, it's grown so much and it's done so much for the community. So look forward to seeing you at the Duck Jazz Festival October 12th through the 13th.